Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Shift podcast. Elizabeth Scala here, your host, and I want to first off welcome the shifters. Shifters, listeners, that's you. So if you're a new listener, I lovingly call you shifters because you are in the right place, about to make a shift in your nursing career. Shifters who've been coming back week after week, we want to thank you for your loyalty and listenership. I'm sure glad to hear all of the positive feedback on social media in the Your Next Shift Facebook community, which let me point out to the listeners, if you want a supportive place, maybe even get in touch with some of these guests, some of them are in there, talk to nurses across the country about career goals and changes, all sorts of fun stuff. Join the Your Next Shift Facebook community. And then, just in general, this is a wonderful way to connect with nurses who are inspired, innovative, dynamic, and really ready to make some positive changes in their careers. So let's get to the point of today's program, which each and every week I get to say I'm in the best seat of the house. I get to interview nurses from across the country who are doing, my goodness, such fantastic things. So Melissa, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
I am excited to interview today because I've been doing my homework and researching you online and getting a little bit more of your background. I know I just introduced you with your brief bio, and as I point out always to the shifters, I give the guests such a short, limited space. Tell us a little bit more about your nursing background, sort of some of the roles you've had, and then what you're currently up to.
Sure. So I have been a nurse. This is my 20th year in June. It feels kind of weird to say I'm in that 20. But I will be a nurse 20 years in June. I have done most of my career. I started out, bedside. I did some pediatric nursing. And then after that, most of my career has been in two areas, case management and case management leadership. So I've been doing that for probably about 15 years. I've done case management in home care, hospice, and now I'm in the exciting world of workers' comp. I know not everybody thinks that's very exciting, but that's what I am currently doing with my regular nursing job. And then, of course, back in the mid part of 2017, I started my own business doing writing, career coaching, and nurse consulting.
Amazing. So we'll point this out since you just mentioned it here, and we will, again, shifters, point this out at the end. Where can folks find you online?
So online, the best place would be on my website, which is makingspace.company. And then, of course, I have all my links to Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff on there as well.
Perfect. Okay. So you talked to us about the early stages of your career, pediatrics, the types of nursing you did. Now, I ask this of every guest, and I always love hearing these stories. How did you get into nursing in the first place? Was there an experience, a person sort of role model, or like me, kind of just happen upon it? Tell us about how you got into healthcare and specifically nursing.
So there's kind of two things that happened. I grew up with very ill grandparents, unfortunately. So I was around nurses a lot, whether it be in the hospital, they had home care as well as hospice. So I was kind of around that environment a lot. But then actually choosing a career, it came down to finding something that my parents were very, let's be realistic about what you're going to be able to do to get a paycheck and to know you always have a job. And that's where nursing came in, because it was something that I was familiar with, something that I had seen in action. And then really looking at, okay, I want something that, and there is flexibility to it. And that was something that I really liked about it, that I didn't have to be a bedside nurse forever. I could look into other areas.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That is certainly, the premise, the reason why I started this show in and of itself was to highlight all of the different ways that a person can navigate the nursing profession. And you're right. We don't have to stay stuck in one area. We don't have to stay pigeonholed in one specialty. There's like a world of opportunity once you become RN.
Yes.
So as you work, as you show up both professionally in your sort of like job, and then additionally in your online presence, what's your career philosophy? How do you show up as that nurse, if you had to describe that?
So I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think as a brand new nurse, when I was in my 20s, when I graduated, I was just barely 21. So I was pretty young nurse. It's changed. Now I would say my philosophy is just really being true to who I am and making sure that what I do every day, whether it's in my regular case management job or in my business, that I am working towards those goals and finding those things that make me who I am, and then giving myself the opportunity to do that. And then I feel fulfilled and happy with my nursing career.
Mm-hmm. Two things to point out to the shifters. One is evolution. You begin as a nurse, wherever that is in your life, and as you learn and grow, you evolve. So if you are a shifter out there who's thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not doing the same type of nursing, or I don't show up in the same exact way, that's okay. I mean, we all evolve over time. At least I hope we do. That's a goal, I would think, is we transform as we kind of live our lives. And then secondarily, I love what you mentioned in terms of applying that to everything that you show up for, Melissa, because, if we show up to our job and we're not enjoying it and we're not fulfilling it, it's not fulfilling us because of who we are, well, then certainly it's not going to be fun. So shifters, are you in a role that allows you to be your very best self? And if not, sort of reflect upon that and see what kind of changes need to be made. So next question, we're going to kind of reflect across the spectrum, starting us off with a challenging time, an obstacle, some kind of barrier that you hit up against. But tell us that story in terms of what did you learn through that experience?
So unfortunately, it was recent. So it's a pretty not raw emotion, but it's still there. So because, like I said, I've been in leadership for quite some time, and actually went back to school and graduated with my master's degree in healthcare administration in December of 2016. Funny thing is, I thought leadership was where I wanted to spend my entire career, building into other people and in an organization. And when I graduated, I was in a role that I just didn't fit. It was my philosophy of leadership and the philosophy of those around me who I was working with. They just didn't mesh all of the time. And so I graduated in December of 2016. And by April of 2017, I made the decision to step down from my leadership role. That was hard. It was really hard. I felt like a failure, even though I wouldn't say that I had failed in terms of the job, but I felt internally like a failure. But on the flip side, it was the best decision for me, because I really had been struggling with kind of this idea of this mid-career, almost like a mid-career crisis. Like, it is time to do something different. It is time to not always be working on other people's problems and whether the computer system is working right, or whether, the phones are working right. It's time to do something that I really enjoy and I really want to do. And in that failure, I was still able to use my leadership and use a lot of those skills that now I'm using in my business.
That's fantastic. You bring us right back, Melissa, to your career philosophy. So to being, is the job allowing me to be who I am? And am I showing up in this role? Is it fitting with my values, my assets, my strengths? So again, shifters, this is a great example for you to kind of think about as you talk to yourself in your own mental mind about the changes you make. If you go for a role and you find, it's not working for me, that's okay. I mean, we've had, actually, Melissa, funny story, we had a guest on probably over 100 episodes ago who said they took a new job and only 3 days later were like, oh my goodness, this is not going to work. So it's like, whoa, talk about fast track. All right. So let's flip to the other side of the spectrum then and speak to a success. I think sometimes we as nurses just collectively sort of, oh yeah, sure, that's just part of my job, or, oh, I'm just doing okay. I'm just being the nurse I am. No, we need to toot our own horns and be proud of our accomplishments. So tell us a story about that.
So it's funny, because as I was kind of preparing, I thought I was going to talk about one thing, but I think I'm actually going to go back a little bit into a success when I was doing a little bit more hands-on care, because this particular story has really changed me or molded who I am today. So it was, I was doing hospice care. I was caring for a lady who was about the same age as I was at the time. And she had 2 children, about the same age as my kids. And I was called because in the evening, late at night, she was having symptom management issues, and the family just could no longer control it. So I went, and I could see myself in her. So she's lying in bed. She was just minimally responsive at that time. Her kids are in bed with her. She was divorced from her spouse, or her prior spouse, but still very much in love with him. And just getting to know that family and being able to, even though I was crumbling inside because my heart was breaking, I could see myself, I could see my kids going through this, but I was able to really put on that nurse superhero coat and be who they needed me to be. And I went back to that house every night for about a week until she finally passed, and I was there when she passed. And it was one of the best nursing experiences I've ever had, because that family allowed me to be part of them and a part of their experience and a part of their family. And it's something that just really changed who I was internally and my goals for kind of that legacy of who I want to be as a nurse.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This is so shifters in the audience. This is another podcast. Just, I always tell them transparently what's going on. Another podcast where we're also experimenting with video, and I'm sitting here hoping I don't start crying as you're telling me the story. Melissa, my goodness. Thank you for sharing that with myself and the audience. And you are right. You know, I don't have a lot to comment, but as the shifters are listening to wherever they are, you know, think about it. The reason you became a nurse, you know, why are you doing what you're doing? And the way that you can so touch and impact someone's life, it's beautiful. I have no other words to say. So let's move on before I do start bawling about professional habits. So you're managing a professional job where you work, having an online business, which shifters, I actually wanted to point this out a moment ago when Melissa, you were talking about it. You know, some of us think it's one or the other. And what I love about what you're up to, what I'm up to the same, is you can kind of do both. So anyone out there listening thinking, I kind of want to get into something on my own, you could do both. So Melissa, that being said, you're juggling these roles. You obviously have a family, your own well-being. What kind of professional habits do you have that keep you, you know, setting and reaching goals? What kind of professional habits help you stay on track with your career success?
Sure. So I kind of call it my checks and balances time every day. And then I do it, you know, weekly and monthly, really looking at, okay, what do I need to accomplish today? Sometimes I think for me, I can get overwhelmed, or I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all of these articles to write, and I have this person contacting me and that person, and then my regular job needs me. So really having that checks and balances time where I can say, this is what I need to get done for the day. These are my goals for the day. These are my goals for the week. These are my goals for the month. And then going back and saying, where did I hit? Did I hit all my goals? Do I still have some other things I want to move to the next day, the next week, the next month? I think for me, one of the things that got me kind of where I was in the bad situation in my leadership role was that I was on autopilot. I wasn't doing that checks and balances. I was, you know, I'm in this big fancy position. I don't have to do all of that kind of stuff anymore. I'm just, you know, I made it where I want to be. And that was part of the problem why I wasn't excelling and wasn't happy. And so now that I'm doing something that I love, I want to make sure that I'm continually, you know, checking the pulse of my business and checking the pulse of my daily practice, that I'm happy and I'm achieving those goals.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent activity. I think let's point out for the shifters here, the checks and balances in such a small increment. You mentioned even reflecting on a day, you know, the list of things to get done that day. And then after the fact, maybe at the course of a week or so, you know, what happened, what did get done. So many times we think about like the future far out. And then we think about the future far out, and then there's like 50 things to do. So if we overwhelm ourselves with that large, you know, overarching goal, it can be scary, intimidating, and then make us just get stuck. So Melissa, thank you for pointing out to break things down into smaller increments and taking those steps one at a time, because those actions all build upon each other. So let's move into money. Money, 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 money. I like to ask this question because, we work for the things we have to provide for. And I do like to think we reinvest in ourselves professionally. So what do you spend money on that makes your job in either role better, easier, or some mixture of both?
Networking. I think, it's very easy, and especially in my writing career, I think I really thought, oh, I can just do this all by myself, and I don't need to have other people around me. And what I found is that there are some great, amazing little tribes of other entrepreneurs out there who are willing to invest in me. And yeah, I might have to spend a little money to be in, to have certain memberships and things, but it is so worth it to hear the successes of others, and then to have people who are willing to, I had a recent nurse consultant job that somebody asked me about, and I knew I had 2 people that I could reach out to and say, hey, I have no clue how to get this started, but I really want to try it. Help me, help me. How do I build this? What should I charge? I didn't know any of that. But in a matter of 30 minutes, I had all the information I needed, because I'm willing to put myself out there, as well as making the financial commitment to being a member of some things, so that I do meet some really neat people.
Mm-hmm. And that's so applicable no matter where the shifter finds themselves. Nursing students even, join your professional organization as a student, network in any kind of projects or volunteer positions you can get into. And then as we move across the spectrum into clinical or academic nursing, networking at conferences. And you're right, have that support, even if you have to pay for some of those memberships or coaching or whatever you need to get done. Totally, I hands down would agree. So before we move into the Mad Libs section, let's just mention one more time where folks can find you online.
So it is makingspace.company.
Good. Thank you. And I like that you point that out, makingspace.company, so that we realize we are at .company. Secondly, I will have the link to Melissa's website and all of her social media handles in the show notes. So in your podcast player, you'll be able to find all those links. Additionally, at elizabethscala.com, if you click on the podcast tab, this is episode 134. So all of those links will be there as well. All right. So Melissa, this is where we are in the hot seat. Fun for me, challenging maybe for guests. We'll see. Okay. A Mad Lib. I will just start off a sentence. You finish us off with a word or a short phrase, just the first thing that pops to mind. Okay. All right. So if I were to shift one thing in my career right now, it would be.
Oh, that's a hard one. Let's see. Shift one thing in my career. I think time. I would shift the amount of time that I'm giving to my day job over into a little bit more into my writing company.
And the best of both worlds would be having more time all over the place.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. The next one. One thing I wish I had known about the profession of nursing while growing up is
how hard it is, how it can just take so much out of you, but then it's very rewarding as well. But I don't think that any of us go into it realizing how hard it's going to be and how much of a just continual growth pattern you're going to be in as a nurse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read something recently. It's not really a job. It's more like a lifestyle because, and not everybody, shifters out there, my specialty area is burnout, and I do not want anybody working all the time. I write a lot and talk a lot about that. However, it's just way of life, meaning, like you said, it's taking things out of you. You're giving your heart to it. You're thinking maybe about the patient or client or, even what you have to do with your coworkers. So totally understood. All right. The one thing I wish I had done differently so far in my career would have been
listen to who I was a little bit more. And, in my early career, I think I was looking for a lot of external approval instead of just doing what made me happy.
I mean, so wise, so true, and so many of us struggle with that. So shifters, don't beat yourself up. I'm raising my hand here to have done the same. And the lesson learned, as we heard throughout the course of this conversation today, is really, know who you are, tap into those strengths, and show up in a job that will allow you to utilize them. All right, 2 more. If I were to speak to a shifter listening in the audience one-on-one, I'd share these words of wisdom about nursing, which would be,
be true to you.
Perfect. That's going to be the title of this show for sure. Be true to your nurse. All right. The final one in alignment with this show, finishing us off here. My next shift is?
My next shift is on the horizon. I'm right where I want to be and really working towards the goals that I see myself in for the next 20 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. An ocean of possibilities here. You're right where you are, and something wonderful and amazing is right there too. So Melissa, thank you so much for spending time with us on the podcast. I'm really glad to have had you on the show for myself and the shifters to learn from, and we appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, everyone, you know the drill, as I say week after week. Join us next week for another interview, same time, same place. If you've enjoyed this show, feel free to subscribe to the podcast or tell another friend, family, or coworker about the Your Next Shift podcast. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we do have that online community Facebook group, which is called, funny I should say, Your Next Shift. So anywho, until next time, enjoy your next shift. Thank you. All right, stop. Oop.